So again, welcome everyone to the Motivity Care webinar series. My name is Mim Senft, co-founder of Motivity Care, and we are everything caregiving management. We're here to make caregiving an easier, less risky process. And so we are delighted this month because we celebrated Veterans Day just a few weeks ago to really be focusing in on veterans benefits, how we can better help those that have been veterans either prepare to be cared for or if they're in a caregiving situation and to support their families. And we are delighted to have with us today Heather Burton, who is a social worker with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say, too, that November is also National Family Caregivers Month.
Yes, it is. Yes,
So
it
we
is.
got Veterans Day and the caregiver thing going on this month. It's been a busy month here.
Thank you for bringing that up. And it really should be every month for caregivers, frankly. Well, we're going to jump in and ask a few questions. So what are some of the biggest challenges veterans may have to address as they age?
Well, I think obviously their own health issues is going to be one of them, and just the exacerbation of health issues as they get older. For a lot of, I guess I'm thinking of veterans in particular. So a lot of veterans have post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the things that I've noticed in working with Vietnam veterans is they have a lot of distractions early on in life that can help distract them from the memories of trauma or, things like that. But as they get a little bit older, maybe the kids leave home and they stop working, they don't have those things to distract themselves as much. So sometimes those symptoms even become more prominent for them as they get a little bit older because they have fewer distractions going on.
It's really interesting. Yeah, you wouldn't think about that in the context of aging, but I think that's definitely something that we need to be aware of. Are
Yeah.
there other unique health challenges that veterans face or that those that are caring for them need to be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So the VA now is placing a lot of emphasis on different exposures, different things that veterans were exposed to while they were in service.
Mm.
So there's the burn pits and there's different chemicals and it starts with Agent Orange. We think about that, and the effects of that didn't show up until years later. So the VA is trying to um, identify people who were exposed to certain things like that could be harmful, trying to identify that earlier and catch it. But for some people it might not be showing up until later in life for those veterans.
Great.
So
Thank you. I think that,
yeah.
definitely raises some awareness of some of the unique health challenges. So high level, how does the VA help veterans as they are aging or starting to need care?
I hear that question, but I want to hold off for 1 second because I want to go back to one thing I was just saying. One of the issues with veterans in particular is that there is a lot of overlap between mental health issues and physical issues. And a lot of them who were injured in service it's highly likely that they were injured in a very traumatic way or traumatizing way. So memories or effects, lasting effects of those physical injuries can bring about the mental, just the memories of the event that happened too. It's kind of like a constant reminder. If they have pain or if they have limitations physically, it could actually serve as a constant reminder for them of the traumatic event too. So, and then the more people remember the trauma and the more anxiety they feel and the more tense they become, that could actually exacerbate some other physical problems. So there's this real strong connection with veterans where they have a higher likelihood of having some mental health issues attached to the health issues. and they can kind of just keep playing off of each other and keeping them going. So it just makes a lot of veterans have some more complex issues that, and that makes it more difficult also for the caregivers then to figure all of these different things out and keep track of what's causing what, or what medication or what treatment they need for this, because there's also these other things going on at the same time.
I think, thank you for bringing that up. I think it is incredibly important. We tend to separate mental and physical health, and yet, to your point, they're so deeply intertwined.
Yeah,
And particularly when we're talking coming out of trauma, just basic physiology, we know the more stressed you are, the more inflammation you have at the cellular level, which may be a little sciencey here, but you can
right.
start to see how those two pieces fit together. And so the more stress you have or the more stress you feel, the more vulnerable your immune system becomes. And, for veterans, this is just something that really needs to be front and center. So very much appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so you have a veteran,
Mhm.
they're starting, or you're thinking about like getting them ready, they're starting to age and you have questions. What are the first things that the VA can provide, or what kind of information does the VA provide?
We have a lot of information and we have a lot of programs, and the the website, just va.gov, www.va.gov is the general website for the VA. You can get lost in the VA's website because each department just has so much information, and a lot of services. There's a lot of services that people don't know either, and they could be veterans who are already engaged with the VA who still don't know all the services that we have, or the veterans who don't come to the VA. They're really out of the loop and don't know what's available. But we really have a lot of services. Usually, when somebody comes in and enrolls for healthcare through the VA, they'll start off with a primary care team, and they will get assessed on so many different levels for any type of mental health issues and several different types of physical health issues. And that team will start talking to them about what would be helpful for them in their particular situation. So some people, they need home health aides, and we can set them up with that. Some people are homebound and have a hard time getting out, so we have a home-based primary care team that will come out to the house, so that veteran doesn't even have to leave. They can get their blood drawn from home. Somebody will come out and do that. They have a psychologist that will come to the house and work with the veteran or the spouse or the family who's there taking care of that veteran. Um, we have a medical foster care program. So if a veteran is living on their own, but maybe is not doing so well, not thriving on their own, but don't necessarily need full inpatient or nursing home care, they could go there. We have volunteer families that will take that person in and just give them some extra support and just an extra set of eyes on that veteran, but they don't have to live alone. They could live with one of these families in medical foster care. Um,
That's an incredible benefit.
yeah, there are many services that the VA provides, and I think so much of it has been geared towards the aging population. The VA sort of, that's one of the myths actually, is that most of our veterans are aging, as we all are, but is an older population, and we're trying to get more services or appeal more to some of those younger veterans. So much of our service has been directed towards the older population. So we really do have a lot of help available.
Well, and that's important, I think, to point out that, when we say caregiving, right, it can be for somebody at any age. I mean, unfortunately, more younger people are being diagnosed with cancer. And I would imagine for the
Right.
veteran population, given what they're exposed to, that those numbers are going to increase. So I think this is really important for the audience to understand that caregiving through and these veterans benefits are not just for people that are 60, 65.
Mm-hmm.
It's any veteran at any point where they may need care.
You're
So
right.
you bring up a really good point. Like we go to these websites, there's a million resources, or it feels like that to us, and we're overwhelmed. So, what's your advice if you're starting out and somebody wants to make that initial phone call to just get some information about which parts of this website or who they should be talking to? What's that first contact, that first phone call?
Oh, that's a really good question. Hmm. And that could be different at different VAs too. Um, I would say, though, and I don't know if this is the official answer to this question, but what I'm going to say is if anyone is looking to figure out what a VA has to offer, call the social worker. And the VA hires a lot of social workers. I think we're the largest employer of social workers. So we have a lot in all different departments. And I think usually the social worker has a lot of information about what's available. So I think there's a pop-up showing up.
Yeah, it's from the chat, right? So, right, which is just a comment. I found every VA is different. So, to your point, you call your local VA, you ask to speak with a social worker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So somebody when a veteran is enrolled and they're assigned to a primary care team, there will be a social worker with that team. That's part of that team. And that is usually their go-to person for most things because that's just what the social worker does. The social worker is there to sort of be that liaison in a way for that veteran and help that person navigate all the different departments and get them whatever they need. And usually the social workers, at least in this VA, are very attentive and responsive.
Good.
Oh, yes. I can't fully read that question that's on there, but just to speak to some of the younger veterans also, the caregiver support program at the VA, I believe its original intention was really to help the the caregivers of those younger veterans who are coming back. So that's another thing that makes veterans unique in terms of needing care is not only is there mental health, but there's a lot of traumatic brain injury issues that come up that require caregiving at a much younger age and for a much longer period of time. So that's another piece to this puzzle that makes it a little more complex with veterans is that some of these caregivers have been caring for their veteran from a very young age. And it is, it's going on for a long time.
Right. Caregiving in general, whether it's a veteran or an aging adult, like people don't tend to think about really, this goes on for years. And so having a very good relationship with that person at the VA, building that relationship. And I want to just acknowledge Christy. Thank you. Her comment was, I like to start with eligibility, which is good, right? So what am I eligible for? What is my loved one eligible for versus not? What does that really mean in the context of, this care plan that we're putting together?
Yeah. And for that, and that's a really specific question too. So I think it is good when you are able to go and make a phone call and get somebody on the phone. Eligibility is a great place to start. And that's usually where somebody starts when they're coming to enroll also. They can enroll electronically by phone. They can come in person, but it's going to be probably with an eligibility specialist who's going to sign that veteran up.
Great.
And they're a great resource for all of the things they're eligible for that may still not explain to them all of the services we provide, though.
Got it. And I think, again, it might be interesting to hear like some of the more specific questions. Like if you know nothing and you're talking to eligibility or you're talking to that social worker, what are maybe the 2 or 3 questions you should start with to kind of help orient you to getting down that path for a real care plan?
I think, yeah. So, and what am I eligible for would be the number one thing, because that's really important. How to get a service connection is another really important thing. And that's not something that we do at the VA necessarily, but we can direct people to different places who help with that part of the process. And getting a service connection is a rating that veterans can get that determines to what extent their injury or illness is related to their time in service. And the higher their service connection, the more benefits they're eligible for. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle.
So when you
People
say
can,
service connection, can you just expand on that a little bit for people that don't know what that is?
yeah, it's what I said. It's a determination. It's a number from 0 to 100%, and the veteran would need to go through a process, and for whatever type of injury they have, and it could be mental health or it could be physical health, they would be seen by specialists and their records would be reviewed from whatever doctor they'd seen for that condition. And then a determination is made as to whether that injury or illness is a result of their time in service.
Mm.
So some of those things might be pretty simple to explain. If somebody, suppose someone got into a car accident and, injured their back, that injury, we're going to be able to see exactly what that connection is. But somebody with maybe more of a mental health issue or post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes that's harder to find the evidence of.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it can be a process. Sometimes it can take people a few tries before they get their service connection. So if they get a lower rating than they want, I always tell people appeal and keep trying, keep trying, keep trying, because things are always changing too. As we were saying before we got on, that's the inevitable piece of it, right?
So just to kind of level set, like the first time you go through this process, provided you get all the information in a timely way, because we know they've got to provide it first. How long typically does that first review take?
Huh.
Ish.
It, it could take up to a year.
Okay. That's important for people to understand because I think when you start this, you get very frustrated. And so if you go in knowing that that first round could take up to a year,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's just these kinds of pieces of the puzzle. People, because you think you go start going through an emergency, you want answers right away, but things don't always move that quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And that part of it is out of our hands. That's not within our facility. That's through the benefits, and that's a different animal altogether. We don't make that determination here at the healthcare facility. That's determined somewhere else. But they will take all of our notes. So if I'm writing a progress note for somebody I saw, if I were treating them for a mental health condition or something like that, then they would get all those records, and that team will review everything to determine that service connection.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when we talk about this process and getting in where you really do start needing services and care. This need before hopefully that happens, having some kind of a conversation around a financial care plan, because if you don't have some reserve to pay for these things while this review is happening,
Mm-hmm.
that can become an incredibly stressful situation for the family. So we would just encourage everybody to think about that in advance if you can. I mean, obviously that doesn't always happen, but it's just another piece of the puzzle that you want to consider because again, you don't want to be going through your own retirement savings for someone else.
Right.
Um,
Right. And I think I think that piece of advice is good in general too. If people can at least enroll in the VA and know that they have some kind of connection already, I think that's, even if they feel like, no, you know what, I've got health insurance through my job and I see a doctor out in the community, that's fine. Enroll with the VA also and start learning about what's there and what's available, because when the time comes, it is really good to be prepared ahead of time or just have some awareness of what's available.
right. Excellent advice. Even if you have other health insurance, even if you have other means. If you're a veteran or you're helping a veteran, register them right away as soon
Yeah.
as you can. Uh,
Yep.
Very good advice.
And I have a lot of people. I will be out in the community at tables to represent the VA, and people will come up and say, "No, I'm not a veteran," but then they tell me that they served in the Army for 4 years or whatever, and I'm like, "Well, you are a veteran then." Um, so people somehow, for some reason, don't view themselves as a veteran, and I think it kind of goes back to that. They view a veteran as somebody with a World War II hat, or a Vietnam veteran hat, who's much older. But
But it's
no,
anyone that's served,
it's
correct? And
anyone who served.
right. So that's very important to let those folks know that they do have access. A question that we get often too is the spouse of a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
So does the spouse have access to veterans benefits as they're aging or if they need care?
um, I gotta so that depends. And if a veteran is 100% service connected, which is the goal. That's where everyone wants to be when they get their service connection. They want 100%. If they're 100%, then their family members qualify for CHAMP VA, which is CHAMP VA is the health insurance that can be used out in the community or at the VA. So the spouse would be able to come in and access the doctors, the nurses, the lab, the pharmacy, the mental health. The spouse can use the CHAMP VA to get all their services here in our facility also.
Great.
Um,
And so, we also, there's an extending question, like you may have somebody that's not a legal spouse, somebody
yes,
that's a partner. Um,
that's not. That would not be covered. That person would not be covered under CHAMP VA.
yeah, it's
Um,
important for people to understand that. Yeah,
yeah, my understanding is that it has to be they have to be legally married
got it.
for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So
I mean, it's right. The laws are the laws. A lot of these are contracts. And it's better to know these things in advance
right.
so that you can make the best
But
decision for you.
here's the one thing though. So in my program, which is the caregiver support program, one piece of it is I call it the touchy-feely piece, which is my part of it. We do the counseling, the do all the supportive services, the education, the navigation, stuff like that. The other side is PCAFC, Program of Comprehensive Family Caregiver Services. And for those veterans who have at least a 70% service connection and need to have, I believe it's like 2 to 3 ADLs taken care of by somebody else,
And
they
define ADL just for anybody who's listening.
um, they need help bathing or getting dressed or feeding, just those real hands-on,
Daily
just
living activity.
daily living. Yep, it's the activities of daily living is what it stands for. So it's just those everyday things. They need help brushing their teeth. Well, those are ADLs. So if they didn't have somebody else to do that, their quality of life would be severely impacted.
Mhm.
That's some of the criteria to qualify for the comprehensive program, and that one provides a stipend to family caregivers. So
Great.
that is, the caregiver would actually get a monthly check or it's direct deposit, but they would get cash monthly from the VA. And they also then qualify for, they could get mental health services through the VA.
Hmm.
And there's a couple of extra things too. They would get reimbursed for travel to and from appointments, and they get some help with some legal services if they need it. So, and financial services. So, there's a little bit of extra financial benefits that can come to family members. And it doesn't have to be a spouse, it's anybody who is providing care to that veteran. If it's not a family member, they need to live with the veteran in order to qualify for that one. If it is a family member, they don't have to live with the veteran and they can still qualify for that stipend. So I believe that's I won't say it's the only one, but it's one of the only um, services that really helps out the family members as well.
That's great. And I think it's important when we think about, one of the biggest challenges is those that are caring for a person, whether it's a veteran or non, it doesn't matter, the amount of hours it really does take. And unfortunately, how many people are giving up their careers or going part-time or whatever. So some kind of financial piece of it. And again, there are other pieces financial pieces that can be added to these veterans benefits to make it even better for that caregiving person. So this is why you really want to think through a financial care plan, not just for the person being cared for, but those that are going to be the primary caregiving decision makers that, maybe in the home or, whatever they're doing.
Yep.
And
And after the fact, and this has come up with our caregivers whose veterans have passed away, and then they're sort of surprised at how much money goes away when that veteran is gone too. So I think it is really important that the caregivers um, are thinking ahead and protecting themselves, whether they're with a veteran or anybody else, because finances change when one person is no longer there.
we talk about that a lot at Motivity Care. There is a real financial hit if you take a caregiving break. And if you are older, unfortunately, trying to get back into your career is extraordinarily difficult, which is why we are all about pre-planning education. There's no right or wrong answer to this, but you should have the information that you need to make the best decision for you and your family. We are out of time, believe it or not. We
I
probably could
know.
go on, but such great information. And thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your
Thank you.
expertise. We just want to thank the veterans, their families, for all they have done and do, and we want to make sure that they get the best care possible. So we encourage you to talk to veterans that you know, and if you're an employer group or an HR team, is to get more of this information so you can better educate your employees around this topic. And we invite you to join us next month. We are going to be talking about when family members go rogue. We don't like to think about that, but there are very specific ways that you can protect your loved ones, so that the family member that may not be as ethical, can't squeeze their way in. And it's just a better way to protect you and your family in the future. So thank you to everybody that joined us today. For those that are listening to the recording, again, thank you so much, Heather, for taking the time to be with us. And from all of us at Motivity Care, we are here to make aging easier and caregiving more secure. If you need support, it's free to give us a call. We're here to get you to the right resource, including resources like Heather. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.